Mark and I have identified 9 different what we call intersections with software architecture in different parts of the software development ecosystem. And we wanted to describe these 9 intersections, but we didn't want to just describe them with prose because they're different in different organizations, and that's not that useful as a way of being actionable from an architect standpoint. And so that's where this idea of architecture as code comes in. Can we express these descriptions about these different intersections, but do it as code? And so our subject today is software architecture in the enterprise. So let's talk about that very specific intersection, software architecture in the enterprise, with this architecture as code perspective on the world. So this is what we are calling both fitness function driven architecture, where you can actually write fitness functions, define what your architecture looks like before you implement the architecture. And this is really a way of using some of the 21st century features delivered by Gen AI and agentic AI in the service of a common goal in enterprise architecture, which is this idea of governance.
The part that we sometimes overlook is the tasks themselves are moving work forward, but it's the decisions inside those tasks that determine the outcome. And that distinction is really critical when we start to introduce autonomous agents into the system.
For AI, it isn't the infrastructure which usually breaks. Your compute, your storage, your APIs, and even your integration layers, they can probably cope just fine. When you add agents, you can scale your compute by giving more CPUs, auto scaling, and using the same cloud. Your storage remains the same. So same data lake, same core systems. API and integration also do not suddenly stop working. Agent just become another client on the bus. So from a classic enterprise architecture view, nothing drastic happens. Kubernetes doesn't care where the caller is a UI, a batch job, or an agent. So infra doesn't really break. That's the point. Then why there is so much fuss about it? What doesn't fit anymore are the abstractions which are hiding inside the complexity.
As a global black belt at Microsoft, I've been working with customers since the very beginning of cloud. So it's just really cool to see the growth of where customers are taking their ideas and applying different type of tooling. Being able to lead the open source initiative, in our global black belt team, we work with so many different technologies and tooling in the industry. So that's the great thing about open source. To Brian's point, is that you have the accessibility to all this tooling, and in AI, things are changing so fast. So you want to be able to see what's best to breed, what actually is going to be using for your use case.
With Intel and obviously with Microsoft, I think what I want to step back and just remind everybody is open source, right? This is a big thing and theme here, right? And with the open source, we also have OCP, right? And OCP safe. And that's something that Microsoft and Intel both are involved in. And then we also have the Confidential Computing Consortium, and we're both involved in that. And so this is why it's so important to look at these open source platforms. It's bringing security out and transparent, and then it's no longer security through obscurity.
For me, the starting point to begin building up governable AI workflows is to decompose the agentic steps into smaller discrete stages or microagents. In the same way that protein folding algorithms explore vast structural possibilities to discover viable biological forms, an agentic business could explore vast combinations of value chains, configurations, workflows to discover viable organizational forms. And our discussion so far has focused on agentic units inside the enterprise boundary. But what happens when those boundaries become permeable?
Building agents should feel like shaping an idea rather than fighting a maze of code or infrastructure. And we've seen this story before. A decade ago, the web moved from hand-rolled routing and homegrown build scripts to opinionated frameworks and platforms that understood what developers were trying to do. Velocity went up, quality followed, and generations of product appeared as overnight. So AI is following the same arc, but the stakes are larger because what you build is no longer a simple set of pages, but it's a system that intelligently reasons, plans, and acts. We used to have 10 people in doing this job we reduced it to 1 person, which 9 people moved to another department doing really much more better work and creative and sales related rather than repetitive. They told us they don't want to do that, basically. And this slide, I just want to say that we open source this agent. So you can go and see the code yourself, OSS-lead-agent. And we're using it, we open source it, you can see and incorporate it in your workflows.